Windows 95 Teal. The default Windows 95 background wasn't a wallpaper, it was a single color, which most of us would just call teal. Mid-90s graphics cards could only handle a restricted color palette, and the Windows 95 color scheme of royal blue, gray, and teal basically came from working backwards from what hardware could actually display. The teal itself wasn't even new. It had been kicking around as a Windows NT background since pre-release builds in 1992, and got carried over when the 32-bit code was ported to 95. Virginia Howlett, who led the Windows 95 design team, later described that era as a kinder, gentler time before we were trying to manipulate people, which is a generous way to describe a desktop that was teal because the technology couldn't really do anything more interesting. Windows 98 Clouds. Clouds is one of the stranger entries on this list, mostly because nobody knows who made it and it actually shipped with Windows 95 first. It wasn't the default there, the default was teal, but it was the branding wallpaper, the one on the box, on the boot screen, and all the marketing. By the time Windows 98 came out, Clouds was a selectable wallpaper that hundreds of millions of people had on their actual desktops. The strange part is that Microsoft's design team made it in-house, but no specific designer has ever been confirmed. People have tried to find one, but they kept hitting a wall. The painted cloud motif also became the visual ancestor of BLISS. When Microsoft was picking XP's default, the brief asked for something with more grounding than the skies they had been using since Windows 95. Windows XP BLISS. BLISS is probably the most viewed photograph in human history, and the man who took it was paid once in a flat sum with no royalties. Charles O'Rear shot it in January 1996 along Sonoma Highway in southern Sonoma County, on his way to visit his then-girlfriend in Marin. He was using a Mamiya RZ67 medium format camera on a tripod, loaded with Fujifilm Velvia film, which he picked specifically because it saturated greens and blues better than what he had been using. He took 4 shots and kept driving. The hill only looked like that because of an insect. Throughout the 1990s, Napa Valley was being torn apart by phylloxera, a microscopic bug that destroys grapevine roots. By the time the epidemic ran its course in 1999, around 50,000 acres of vines had been wiped out, and the industry was out roughly $500 million. Microsoft bought the rights outright in 2000. O'Rear has said it was the second largest payment ever made to a living photographer for a single image, beaten only by the photo of Bill Clinton hugging Monica Lewinsky. Reports put it in the low 6 figures. When it came time to ship the original transparency, FedEx refused because the value exceeded their insurance limit. So Microsoft bought O'Rear a plane ticket to Seattle and had him hand-deliver the film himself. XP launched in October 2001 with a $200 million advertising campaign built around that hill. It ended up on more than 400 million computers. O'Rear has since said he wishes he had taken a fraction of a cent for every time the photo got viewed. The hill itself was replanted with vines a few years later and is now part of a vineyard owned by Domenic Carneros, which makes a Pinot from grapes grown on BLISS. Windows XP Red Moon Desert. Red Moon Desert was almost the default Windows XP wallpaper. There's a specific reason it wasn't. It's also a Charles O'Rear photo, taken in the late 1990s in Kalahari Gemsbok National Park in South Africa, during a year-long assignment for Corbis after they bought his stock agency. The original title was Full Moon Over Red Dunes, but Microsoft renamed it Red Moon Desert. Microsoft engineer Raymond Chen later wrote on his blog that the image had been intended as the XP default, but was swapped out after some testers said it looked like buttocks. Build archaeology suggests that's not quite the full story. Earlier internal builds already had BLISS as the default, and Red Moon Desert may have been a decoy in publicly leaked builds. But the buttocks comment is a matter of record, which is the kind of detail Microsoft can't really delete from history. There's also a fan theory that the image is a digital composite. The moon appears upside down for the northern hemisphere, and the colors are more saturated than O'Rear's other shots from the same trip. He has never confirmed or denied this. Windows XP Autumn. Autumn is the wallpaper that took Vanity Fair a year to track down. It's a photo of leaves on a country lane, taken in October 1999 by a Canadian photographer named Peter K. Burian on a Nikon F90. He was actually testing lenses for a photography magazine. He submitted 2 versions to Corbis, royalty-free. Microsoft licensed the horizontal one in 2001 for around $300. Burian's cut was 15%, so $45, for a photo eventually seen by hundreds of millions of people. The Vanity Fair part is real. In 2006, contributing editor Nick Tosh's decided he wanted to know where the lane was. He spent close to a year on it. He contacted Microsoft customer service, photo agencies, freelance photographers, editors. He emailed Russian image sellers and Vermont tourism boards. He tried to reach Bill Gates. The break came when Vanity Fair's senior photo research editor Ann Schneider identified Burian by name, despite Corbis not having credited him. Burian then had to figure out which lane it was, because he had taken hundreds of similar shots that day. He eventually traced it to a stretch of road in Kilbride in Burlington, Ontario, south of an old farmhouse called the Harris Paris homestead, originally built in 1840. Windows Vista Aurora. Vista's wallpaper was not a photograph. It was the first default Windows wallpaper since Clouds that was rendered from scratch. The image was an abstract piece in blue-green shades intended to evoke the aurora borealis as seen near Microsoft's Redmond headquarters. It was built around the Vista flare, a branding element reused in Explorer Windows and the screensaver. The internal team called for something peaceful, calm, and open. While Vista's creative director Jenny Lamb oversaw the entire visual program, the specific image is generally credited to in-house designer Robert Stein. The brief is the funny part. The team explicitly described Aurora as an aurora in the skies above the Green Hill, above the Bliss Hill. It was openly conceived as Bliss's successor. Vista was, by reception, a disaster. The wallpaper was not. The visual design got praised even when the operating system didn't. There's a 2007 BBC segment where the interviewer flatly describes Bliss as Teletubbies Hill while talking to Lamb about how much more sophisticated Vista's aesthetic was. Vista shipped in November 2006, hit general availability in January 2007, and Aurora outlived its operating system in a way most Vista features didn't. Windows 7 Harmony. Harmony was made by a digital artist named Chuck Anderson, who works under the name No Pattern. Microsoft contacted him in December 2008, sourced through the agency 72 and Sunny. The commission took about 4 months and was put together with a Wacom tablet and Photoshop. There was a number motif, 7 leaves, 7 branches, 7 flower petals. Some of the supporting artwork around it had 7 bubbles. None of that is decorative. Microsoft wanted a 7 hidden everywhere they could fit one. Anderson revealed years later that the source PSD was 10,800 by 6,750 pixels. At 450 dpi, 16-bit color. The file was 556 megabytes. He has said publicly that it was one of the most insane files he ever had to work on and that it caused massive performance drops on his machine just trying to keep it open. The wallpaper that almost shipped instead was a beta fish. It was used in Windows 7's beta and release candidate builds and got replaced by Harmony in build 7.232. The beta fish was then quietly recycled into early Windows 8 builds, where the same fish became the boot logo for a while. Nothing in Microsoft history really gets thrown away. Windows 11 Bloom. Bloom is the only Windows wallpaper made by an Argentinian Taekwondo silver medalist. That's a real sentence. The wallpaper was created by 6N5, a Barcelona-designed studio led by Ezequiel Pini, who was born in Buenos Aires in 1985 and represented Argentina internationally in Taekwondo before becoming a digital artist. The studio's name refers to 6:05 p.m., the time work ends and personal projects begin. The image itself is not a photograph, it isn't even a flower. It's a 3D render of a piece of blue fabric folded to resemble a rose sitting against a light blue-gray background. Microsoft and 6N5 had been working together since 2019, when the studio was first hired to design wallpapers for the new Surface lineup. Bloom emerged from that. Windows 11 went public on October 5th, 2021. The whole project happened across an ocean during a pandemic. Pini's framing was that Bloom was supposed to symbolize a new and fresh beginning, a flower opening for the first time, which is a long way from a desktop being teal because graphics cards couldn't render anything else. Over 30 years, the Microsoft default wallpaper went from a single color picked because mid-90s hardware couldn't display anything richer to a CGI fabric flower built in 3D. The wallpapers got prettier, the price tags went up, and the photographer who took the most viewed image in human history is still on a flat fee.